In 1965, Bernard Garrett finds himself in Washington, D.C., receiving a cautionary message about the need for caution, as there is a plan to use him as an example. As he gears up to testify before a committee, the story takes an unexpected turn, transporting us back to Bernard's childhood in Willis, Texas, in 1939. Disregard the appearance of his modest hat. Underneath it hides a sharp business acumen. Meet Bernard, a young black boy with a talent for shoe shining. Take note, as he strategically sets up his shoe shine stand in front of the bank, catering specifically to affluent white customers. His ambition reaches beyond the meager earnings from shining shoes. Instead, he operates with precision, discreetly overhearing the financial discussions of white patrons awaiting their shines. After their departure, Bernard diligently records their valuable financial insights in his notebook. From a young age, his unwavering dream is to become a banker. Despite his father's doubts about his dream, Bernard's determined gaze remains steadfast in the face of formidable challenges. Fast forward 15 years, Bernard, accompanied by his wife Eunice and their son, relocates to Los Angeles, choosing the city for its comparatively milder racism environment. Despite initial challenges, staying in a cramped utility room at a relative's house, Bernard assures his wife of finding a better home soon. Securing a job as a real estate agent, he meticulously explores the city for available houses. Observing a scarcity of homes in the crowded black neighborhood and noticing vacant houses in the white neighborhood, Bernard identifies a lucrative opportunity in real estate investment and rental. A messy, white-owned apartment becomes his focus for potential financial gain. Recognizing the apartment's strategic location next to a black neighborhood, Bernard proposes buying the house to the owner. He offers an upfront payment of $30,000 and an additional $5,000 upon renting all the rooms. While the owner is intrigued, the fear of risk holds him back. Despite the setback, Bernard, glancing at the owner's desk calendar with a link to a local bank manager, gets an idea. Leaving the owner, Bernard heads straight to the bank but faces discrimination from the secretary, who refuses to introduce him to the manager. Undeterred, Bernard waits for hours until he seizes an opportunity to speak to the manager. Claiming knowledge of a VIP bank customer, Bernard pitches a business idea that could benefit the customer, hoping for a loan approval. However, the manager dismisses him without much consideration. Later, the owner calls Bernard, suspecting an attempt to use his name for a loan. Bernard apologizes, expecting blame, but the owner admires his determination and agrees to support the loan application. With this backing, Bernard secures his first loan, buys the house, and encounters skepticism from an old white woman who questions his presence. Calmly, Bernard asserts his ownership and commitment to the building's upkeep. The old woman is speechless and angry, so she goes home, and soon after, the police show up. They tell Bernard that an old woman called them and asked if he lied about being the owner and contradicted her. Out of the blue, Bernard pulls out a copy of the real estate certificate. He knew trouble was coming, so he was ready for it. The police realize that the house really belongs to him, so they leave in a huff. The old lady at the door sees Bernard and tells him to leave right away because it's not time for renovations. Bernard calmly replies, "I am not a renovation worker. I am the owner." The old lady is confused and angry a few days later because she doesn't want to live in the same building with black people. As soon as the old lady leaves, Bernard rents her house to a black woman. As he had predicted, the market for black tenants is huge. The building is quickly rented out, and Bernard gives the agreed-upon follow-up payment to the former owner. The former owner admires Bernard a lot and offers to start a business with him. Bernard picks the house, figures out the income, and the old owner negotiates the deal and signs the contract with him in front of white people. Collaboration between the two proceeds seamlessly, yielding immediate financial success. Bernard's prosperity allows him to upgrade from an apartment block to a mansion, offering his family a contented life. Guided by his wisdom, Bernard refrains from retaliating when faced with discrimination, choosing instead to adhere to his own rules. His primary objectives are rational economic decision-making and profit maximization. However, life presents challenges, such as the sudden death of the elderly former owner, whose equity is inherited by a discriminatory widow. Unwilling to accept unfair treatment, Bernard opts for legal action. To substantiate his relationship with the old owner, he seeks the bank manager's testimony, only to face disappointment when the manager sides with the widow. Frustrated, Bernard surveys the bank and conceives a bold plan to combat systematic discrimination. His ingenious idea involves purchasing the building housing for banks, challenging anyone to discriminate against him once he becomes the owner. So Bernard finds Joe, another black real estate developer in Los Angeles, and tells him about his plans. At first, Joe thinks Bernard is crazy because the land price for the building is very high and no black person has ever bought land in downtown LA. But after talking about it for a while, Joe realizes that Bernard is not crazy but a thoughtful rationalist. Why does he want to buy this building? Because the bank inside will stay open as long as he owns it. But they still can't do business directly with white people, so they need a white person to act as an agent. Bernard already has a person in mind, Matt, who has been helping him with renovations. Matt is an honest man who is also very ambitious but not very experienced. So Bernard and Joe set out to teach Matt everything they know about real estate, golf, proper manners, and math. Matt quickly improves his golf skills and can figure out how much a piece of real estate is worthwhile playing. At a golf club, Matt meets the owner of the bank building. This meeting was also set up by Joe. The conversation goes well, and Matt gets the chance to buy the building. The rest of the deal will be negotiated, but Matt doesn't know how to do it. Don't worry, before the negotiation, Bernard helps Matt with all the preparation. First, he counts how many lights are on in the building at night to figure out the vacancy rate. Next, he figures out the building's estimated value by adding up its annual rent and operating costs. Bernard prepares all the numbers that could be used and tells Matt to memorize them before meeting with the owner. That way, no matter how the big boss lies about his property, Matt always gives out the exact number, which surprises the owner. Everything they try doesn't work on Bernard. In the end, he buys the building that was originally worth more than $2.4 million for just $1.56 million. From then on, every time Bernard goes in or out of the building, the president of every bank will come and shake his hand. The little manager who used to make things hard for him is shocked. With the help of the banking industry, Bernard and Joe's real estate businesses grow quickly. They break down the strict zoning that separates black and white neighborhoods in Los Angeles and help many young, talented black people move into white neighborhoods. Soon after, the vice president even meets them. In 1963, Bernard takes his family back to Texas to see his father, Britton. After dinner, Britton tells Bernard that he's proud of all that he has done. The next day, Bernard walks around town with his son and ends up in front of the bank where he used to work as a shoeshine boy. At that time, Texas was the most racist state in the country. Encountering a young shoeshiner who only serves white customers evokes a sense of responsibility in Bernard, prompting him to take action for the betterment of black people in his hometown. The following day, Bernard proposes to Joe the idea of purchasing Mainland Bank in Texas, despite the prevalent racism. Although initially skeptical, Joe is persuaded by Bernard's compelling argument and agrees to support the endeavor, utilizing Matt as their frontman. This time, the owner of the bank secures a job for his son, Robert Florence, Jr. as a loan officer, along with a 20% stake as part of the deal. They engage in negotiations with Robert Florence Sr. and Jr., ultimately convincing Sr. to sell the bank to Matt and his associates, despite Jr.'s reservations. When the Mainland Bank is bought, Bernard goes to work and helps African Americans in town get loans. It seems like Bernard wants to give his fellow men a fair chance at housing and even ways to make money. Things go well for a while until Florence Jr. starts looking into the loans that their bank approves. One day, Florence follows Matt and meets up with Bernard and Joe. He talks to them about the loans they approved and threatens them with a letter from the U.S. Treasury Department, stating that the department will inspect the bank's operations in 1 month. As Florence Jr. leaves, the guys discuss their next moves. Matt proposes that the trio buy another bank, the Marlin Bank, and move the colored loans to Marlin till Mainland is audited. To circumvent the ownership problem, he proposes that Joe and Bernard let Matt run Marlin on his own. Bernard is against this, but Matt threatens to resign if they don't agree. Joe convinces Bernard. Meanwhile, Susie is pushing Matt that he should not allow colored people to treat him like an employee. Matt takes charge of Marlin and soon shifts the loans onto the Marlin's books. Within a week, the U.S. Treasury official comes to Matt to audit Marlin's books. The official finds several loans in the books that are not according to the Banking Act. Turns out that Matt had hired a lawyer suggested by Florence to buy the loans from mainland, and the lawyer teamed with Florence to add a few loans that violated the Banking Act within the package that Matt didn't check properly. This forces Joe and Bernard to help Matt sell 27 loans within a week and take a hit of $300K on their books. Joe and Bernard tell Matt that Marlin would have to close to absorb the losses. After a while, Bernard and Joe tell Matt that leaving the Bank of Marlin is the smartest thing to do. Matt doesn't want to let go of his bank, so he does something without telling his partners. The next day, Joe finds out about Matt's move and quickly rushes to Mainland Bank with Bernard to confront him about the loans while Florence looks on with pride. It's too late for Bernard to tell Matt to get their books, because the federal bank inspectors have already come to take away Mainland Bank's license to operate. As Bernard and Joe are leaving the building, they are arrested by the FBI. Bernard tries to stand his ground but fails. Later, Bernard and Joe meet with their lawyer and learn that their case got tangled up in racial politics in the country. At the same time, Matt talks to Senator McClellan about giving evidence against his partners in exchange for his freedom. That night, Matt thinks about what to do next and calls McClellan. Matt does what McClellan tells him to do and testifies against his partners at the Senate hearing the next day. Later that same day, Bernard also meets with McClellan and hears his plan. He gives Bernard a choice: take an immunity deal and confirm Matt's testimony, or say whatever he wants and go to jail. In the end, Bernard says what he's been thinking about for years. He talks about racism in the country. Joe and Bernard are convicted in 1965 by an all-white jury and sent to 3 years in prison. Robert Florence bought the Mainland Bank back from the government at a fraction of the cost, and Matt Steiner is never charged with a crime. In the final scenes, Bernard emerges from prison, where he is greeted by Joe and his wife. He instructs Eunice that it's time to go home, leading to her confusion as she points out they no longer have one. Bernard then unveils a secret. The day before Matt's testimony, Matt contacted him, revealing the threat of a 50-year prison sentence unless he blamed Joe and himself for everything. Despite the impending danger, Bernard advised Matt to do what was necessary. However, seizing the opportunity before the government could confiscate their wealth, he asked Matt for a favor to purchase 2 houses for him and Joe in the Bahamas. Upon hearing this revelation, Eunice is filled with joy. 3 years after their testimonies, Congress passed the Fair Housing Act of 1968, finally putting an end to the long-standing racial issues surrounding property ownership and rental. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more content like this.